down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Now, most of the time, I try to, enlighten. I try to inform. I try to present topics that I think are relevant to today's day and age, and what they, give you some informational aspects about this. This particular topic tonight is very important, and I've been thinking about this program and this particular topic for quite a bit of time. What I needed to do, though, was I needed to get the right pieces into place, and so I thankfully I was able to do that. We were able to the gentleman that I have on for the interview tonight. It is a pre-recorded interview. He is not live, so you will be listening to a pre-recording. I talked to him or spoke to him last week, right before last week's show. And this particular topic is very important, not only to him, but I think it's very important to me. I feel like it's very important for all of us, especially considering how much things like this, in particular, child sex trafficking, is in the news media today. I mean, I can't imagine, first of all, you have the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, you have Ghislaine Maxwell's situation, and now you're starting to see more and more topics coming out. The past administration, Trump, had the federal law enforcement officers going after child trafficking, child sex trafficking, and you can just about see or open up a paper or even look on the news online, and you'll find an article regarding some kind of trafficking, whether it's slaves, whether it's sex slaves, that kind of thing. So I really felt like I wanted to do this show, and I wanted to bring in an expert. I wanted to bring in someone who has a broad range of experience and knowledge in this arena. And thankfully, I actually, just full disclosure here, he is a distant relative of mine in particular, but it's actually my wife's association with him. So, thankfully, I have him. I have the capability of talking to him. But the fun part about this is, or the great part about this is, I should say, not fun, but the great part about this is the fact that he is willing to talk to just about anybody. He is that passionate about this topic, and especially with regards to the initiative that we're going to be discussing. I want to let everybody know I've got links in the show notes, or in the description, for some things that we are going to be talking about within the interview. And the interview is roughly about 30 minutes long, so it is going to take up a good portion of the show. And because of that, I am not going to be taking any calls. I know I didn't take any calls last week or whatever, but I definitely am not going to be taking any calls. But I am in the chat window here, so during the interview, if you have questions, if you want to ask some things or whatever in the chat, make sure you log in so you can get into the chat. As always, I want to thank my subscribers. I want to thank you all for coming here to listen to this message and to listen to this. Hopefully it will help educate you a little bit, and definitely potentially get you involved in helping this organization. It is a 501c3 organization, charitable organization that allows these people to be able to provide, in particular, the reward money that they're putting out for tips to come to this. So without further ado, let me go ahead and I'm going to switch scenes here real quick. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest that I interviewed. His name is Jim Fuda. He is a retired King County, Washington sergeant. 33 years on the force. He has more than 15 years as a part of that as a special operations commander. He also has traveled throughout the world, doing seminars, consulting, helping teach other countries about policing and police force and police operations and that kind of thing. I cannot describe all of the things that he does. I know that I've seen him before as like a hostage negotiator. He himself has seen many of these child sex trafficking in his travels. He's been to several other countries, not only the countries that he is going to be talking about as a part of the interview, but also in Southeast Asia and that kind of thing. He is really, really passionate about this topic in particular, and I wanted to bring his message and his organization that he has founded to light. I can't even describe all of the things that he's done. I just know that he has dedicated his entire life to policing and is still doing it today in a civilian capacity. So if you will, please listen to the interview, listen to the things that he has to say, and then I'll come back and I've got some other things to show you and discuss with you a little bit, coming from a presentation that he shared with me in regards to this. So without any further ado, let me see if I can get this going in a decent fashion here. So let me do this. I will get rid of me, and here we go. Jim, I want to thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your willingness to come on to the show and discuss about this topic. I know that this is a big focus of your time and initiative, the initiative that we're going to be talking about, and this is a really big subject, I guess, and problem in our society today. So like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and be willing to discuss this with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. In fact, it's such a topic and dear with my heart that needs to be discussed, and I'll talk to anybody that'll listen to me about it, to be honest with you.
Well, that makes it perfect for this show.
Okay.
All right. So as a part of the information that you passed on to me, you gave me a link, which I've put in the description for this particular show, that discusses, that you narrated, that discusses that essentially every minute of every day, 2 children are prepared for exploitation, and that the entire industry is like $14 to $16 billion. Now, are those figures like just an U.S. national, or are they worldwide?
That's a worldwide stat, and that came from 2018.
Okay, 2018. So we're a couple years farther along than where that statistic came from. So have you noticed, or do you have any inkling as to whether there has been an increase in this particular?
Well, absolutely. There's been a huge increase. In fact, the Internet Crimes Against Children is a international organization that investigates child sex crimes on the web. And they estimate that is up more than 40%, 43% exactly, since the start of the pandemic. Why? Kids are home, and so are the predators.
Okay, so the kids are home and the predators are home. So COVID has essentially made an impact in terms of the estimations.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So as a part of the video, you make note that the average age for these children is 14, but yet some of them could be as old as 3, or as young as 3, I should say, and as old as up to 16. So then while I generally think of girls being like a primary victim to this crime, but I know that they're not the only victims. Do you have any idea in terms of a percentage between like females and males victims?
Well, I don't know. The average in is about 80% of traffic victims are women for prostitution, for sex crimes, and about 70% of those are women, and then the rest can be boys.
Can be boys. So okay, so there seems to be a heavy influence towards women and girls than men. Okay, men and boys. So what about any other statistics on any other demographics? Like, do you see differences based on race, certain hair color, that kind of thing?
It's all races, all ethnic backgrounds, all and for those ages that I told you about. Plus, it goes into, oh no, what do I want to say? I had a point. No, I forgot it. But I had another point I wanted to make, and I've got my some of my notes up here as it goes, but it has grown, and it's with the pandemic, and it's hard to find these people when that are causing they're doing these kinds of acts.
Right. Now, one thing that I know, because I watch a lot of like crime TV, crime dramas. I have one of my avid listeners is actually part of a trial watching network. I can't say the name for NDA kind of things, but what is the percentage? Because I keep hearing in like the crime shows and stuff, the first 48 hours when somebody's kidnapped or taken is really important. Is that kind of a true statistic, that if you can't find them within the first 48 hours, it becomes extremely difficult to?
Well, I think some of those come into more of the kidnap, with like soul kidnap cases.
Okay.
Here is a little different, and I'll give you an example. I have an acquaintance of mine who he and his wife called me 3 weeks ago, both of them in tears. Their 12-year-old daughter had been acting more isolated, had been on the internet a lot, got more irritable, and she had been supposedly talking with a 14-year-old boy that lived in California.
Right.
And bottom line is that wasn't true. It turns out it's an older man, and this woman had already sent nude photos to him, and then started demanding more. Once they get him hooked, then they threaten to tell their parents if they don't send them more pictures. And the part that makes it hard to find is that this person could be anywhere in the world. I know when I lived in Banja Luka, Bosnia, I wanted to watch American television, and I couldn't because I had a Bosnian IP address. But I could go buy an IP address for $5 a year and use that and make it look like I'm in the United States. So imagine how difficult it is for our cyber detectives to track these people down. Very difficult.
So that actually brings up a good point. And it isn't one of the questions that I was going to ask, but like I said, there's going to be some follow-ons here. So while you were talking about that, I was thinking of things like, in the news, we've had the TikTok app as an example, where, it was a big thing, especially for the Trump administration in particular, because it was run by China. What kinds of applications are you seeing being used by kids and that kind of thing that are potential target places?
I actually have a list of those that you could actually use. WhatsApp, Bumble, Holler, Snapchat, like you mentioned, TikTok, Baboo. There's several out there that are relevant, and some of them have the predators have their apps of choice, and they quickly move them to that where that can be controlled better for them.
Right. Now, we actually, since you're kind of talking about this too, we actually had an incident within our area where it was unfortunately, it was a high school kind of romantic, quote unquote, relationship. And unfortunately, the perpetrator was able to get the victim to pass on pictures. and those eventually got distributed. So, I don't think a lot of people understand that even distribution of those types of photos is a crime.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now, kind of going back to your video that you have that you narrated, it mentioned that Brazil and India and surprisingly the United States are like one of the top 3 countries involved in, child sex trafficking in particular. To what extent and what ways is the U.S. in particular involved in this situation?
Well, understand why we're up there is population size for one, and the predators that live in the states and utilize the child porn wherever they're getting it from, and that's where that stat comes from.
Okay, so it's basically the end user, the perpetrators that are really in the U.S. that are kind of driving this?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Now, how often, in terms of, because, you have like movies like Taken, for an example, where the child goes to European countries and gets kidnapped or taken over there, hence the premise of the movie. How often are people or children picked up here in the U.S. and then sent overseas?
I don't think it's that often. I think because the market and the money is here, and I think it's a lot of that is reverse, and you see that coming in from the southern border now, especially with the wall, the way that is, and the immigration status now. But you remember Sheriff Reichert, Dave Reichert, and Congressman Reichert, the same. Yep. Retired. He's now working with a company called Rapid DNA, and they can actually swab a cheek. You have a man or a woman, whatever, bringing kids across the border. They can tell within 30 minutes if those kids belong to that person.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that's going to be a very effective tool. He's in Central America a lot, building the relationships to get that done before it even hits our border.
Now, was that something, that initiative, is that something that was more inclined to be done under the old administration? Is there attempts to kind of carry this into the new administration?
I don't know. I don't think it's an administration thing. This is okay. This is more of basically the right thing to do and a tool to combat human trafficking.
Do you know, is that being used like right now? Because there's a lot of articles that have come out talking about how the kids were coming across the border and there were ways, or they were being, shall I say, detained, and then sent back to their parents under the old administration. But here, we're still talking about potentially a bunch of kids at the border. Do you know if that kind of program is being done right now?
I don't think it's being talked about, but I think it's being utilized. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not that particular one that might take a little bit longer, but I think that's being kept for both administrations is being, I think, it kept a little more quiet. I mean, that's an effective tool, and you don't want to have them to find ways around it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Traffic.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. So I read an article. And it wasn't that long ago. It was within the last 6 months. I don't remember exactly. But in it was in particular talking about a young girl. And she was underage at the time. And her abuse, she was, sexually abused. And her abuse was filmed and then posted to Pornhub as an example. Now, she's actually, I don't know what the disposition of the case is at this point. But she is suing to have some of those videos removed. And I know one thing about the internet is once you post something, and this is part of the danger with those applications that you talked about, once you post something onto the internet, it's out there forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going away. In fact, that's been pulled off of Pornhub and sent to many other sites.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So in your experience, has, and especially with COVID, has the I can't say this, proliferation of the internet porn been an effect or some kind of has there been any kind of correlation between that and an increase in the child trafficking cases?
Oh, absolutely. There's a definite correlation with the amount of kids that they could use to put up on the net, and then goes to these other sites, and then wherever these not traffickers, but wherever the perverts are finding them. I'm an operational guy, and as far as those investigations, ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, is doing those investigations, and Seattle Police actually has an ICAC unit right here downtown.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And as far as I think you termed it as ICAC. As far as ICAC is concerned, are there other locations? That's a nationwide kind of a scenario where they have units?
That's an international.
That is international. Okay. All right. And obviously your organization has some interaction with these people.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So now let's move on to the international, since you gave me a great segue here. Let's move on to your particular, I think you're calling it the Transnational Crime Initiative. I'm just going to shorten that to TCI during our conversation. And you shared some of the collateral information with me in preparation for this interview and that. So why don't you just give us a quick overview of what TCI is for my viewers?
Well, if I could start with how it happened.
Sure.
Is that our local program here, Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound, started using the P3 Tips app, developed out of a guy out of Texas, a company called Anderson Software. They've since sold, and we started using that in November of 2016, and immediately our tips quadrupled and our arrests more than doubled. Why? We're in the gaming generation. I joke I can't get my granddaughter to talk to me on the telephone, but she'll text me back in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So having worked overseas, I decided what a phenomenal tool this would be to hit transnational crimes at the source or the transit routes before it hits the Western world, before it hits the U.S. Mm-hmm. And so but what you need with that is trusted policemen, and the media, and obviously the citizens, if they'll buy into it. So I went back to my trusted guy that I worked with in Banja Luka, Bosnia. He's a Serb part of Bosnia, and he brought a vetted guy, been to the National Academy, FBI National Academy, brought 4 countries together, and I picked 2 outside the European Union, Serbia and Bosnia, and 2 inside, Croatia and Slovenia. The border between Croatia and Serbia, Bosnia is still a little bit dicey.
Right.
And so I did 1 press release, 1 presentation, and we had 47 tips in a week, which means people want to talk, they are afraid to. Now, A couple things we learned is that, 1, we had to move it from Bosnia into Serbia, and the reason is there's 3 distinct governments, but it's actually 3 cultures: the Croats, which are the Catholic, the Bosniaks, which are the Muslim, and the Serbs, which are the Orthodox. And if one agrees, the other 2 don't. Mm-hmm. So we needed a solid government structure, and so we moved it to Belgrade. And the other thing we learned is that a local program could not sustain it. So I brought some think tank people in from around the globe, formed Crime Stoppers Global Solutions, mm-hmm. Which is an NGO, 501c3, and we've been going back. Brought a Serb-American PhD woman on board whose family's well connected. They fled the war. In fact, the dad of this woman runs Radio Serbia out of Chicago. Okay. And so we brought trusted people together and get back and built. It took us 2 years to build a relationship and the trust factor. Mm-hmm. When here comes the Americans coming in to tell us what to do, and that's not the case. We were there to give them a tool, but the key point is trusted, non-corrupt. Because imagine now we get some of these tips and it gets in the wrong hands.
Right.
it can be very counterproductive. So we found that in Serbia with the International Police Association. The guy's name is Dr. Pavelic. He's a PhD, and he reports to their Minister of the Interior, is an advisor to him. A couple of those people will take the tips. We've got the trusted investigators, and what I picked was 7 crimes: human trafficking, terrorism, illicit trade, arms dealing, drug smuggling, cybercrime, and bank fraud. All corruption-based, all crimes without borders.
Right.
And that's how we're moving it forward.
So let me ask you this, because you've mentioned, the Croatia, Serbia. What made you focus on that particular area of the world?
It's where I knew trusted cops.
Okay. So pretty much is due to your contacts and everything else.
Of course.
Okay.
And knowing that Balkan route where all things being trafficked, where depending on where the source is, it's South Asia, Pakistan, whatever, through Afghanistan, through Syria, through Turkey, through Greece, and once you hit that Balkan route, especially,
right,
is that they're once they cross that Croatia border in Croatia, they're free to run all of Western Europe.
And you just gave me the perfect spot to go ahead and share that graphic that you sent over. You just set that up for me, so that was perfect. Okay, so you have that graphic also points out, and I'm sorry, I kind of got a little lost in my notes here, but that graphic also points out that drugs are along that route. So, drugs and sex crimes and those kinds of things are these criminal organizations? I mean, they're not really siloed. They're actually got their fingers in a bunch of different pies, right?
Absolutely. In fact, the guns, especially, from the war they had over there,
right?
The estimation of the guns in those Balkan countries that are there illegally is unbelievable. In fact, I actually have a video of a plane, cargo plane, that took off from the Belgrade airport. And this is in 2017, when the Belgrade airport was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia to help our people fight for us. In fact, it went to Syria to fight against us. And small caches of those guns are now coming back through the Balkan route. And you remember the Charlie Hebdo incident, where the cartoonists that offended a culture and people were killed. Those guns came from that. Plus the ones where they had the concert where almost 100 people were killed, where they blocked the doorways and went in and mowed a bunch of people down.
Right.
Came from that cache.
Wow. And you've been able to track that. I mean, obviously, Americans are not the only ones that put serial numbers on the weapons. It sounds like.
Well, I didn't track it, but UNODC did.
Right. Okay. So now, as a part of the information that you mentioned, I mean, a large part of these enterprises, I guess, kind of a bad word, but the only thing I can think of right now, are the business is cash driven. So I'm an avid listener of technology podcasts and things like that. And one of the big things that is really being, put out there is the whole idea of cryptocurrency. I mean, you've got Bitcoin, you've got Dogecoin, you've got, so many different cryptocurrencies. How much is the advent of cryptocurrencies and its inherent security that's kind of going along with it affecting what's going on in the criminal underworld from your perspective?
Well, I'm guessing that it's not. You still have to use a bank somehow to get cash in your hand.
Yes.
And these they want to stay away from that because that is obviously a red flag.
Okay, so from your perspective, this is mostly a cash operated business. Period.
Yeah. At some level, at most of the levels, yes.
Okay. All right. Now you had mentioned this application that you're using for getting tips, and I know that as a part of the information that you sent over to me, there was a lot about this application from more of a broader perspective. What I'm kind of wondering, first of all, if somebody has that application, what kinds of things can someone do? I mean, give us an idea as to what types of things that somebody who has this app can actually report to you guys?
Well, here in the States, like our program, you could, if you download the free app, P3 Tips, we have a laundry list of any crimes you can think of, including other. And you can, write all the information that you know. You can attach video, photos, or audio to it. Hit submit. It comes to us, and it automatically bounces back a numeric identifier, and that's the only way we know you. And we give that even down to the larger agencies, or even task forces, to the appropriate detective that's working on something, and that detective can contact the tipster without knowing who you are, where you are. So it's a phenomenal tool.
So how does it determine then, like, where to send this information? I mean, how do you guys determine this? Like, if I were to do something, let's say in Washington State, when I send it up to you, how do you determine what area of the country the law needs to be informed about this?
Well, if you have a bank robbery at 4th and Union, you're going to know that's in Seattle Police's jurisdiction.
Okay.
If you've got one in Burien, that's going to go to the King County Sheriff's Office, which is the contract with the contracts with the city of Burien for police services.
So is that are those details that the users are providing, or is this something that the app is like gathering automatically?
Oh, the app will determine that from the address.
Okay.
Of who that should go to.
Okay. So in terms of reporting crimes, and we've kind of jumped around a little bit, but in particular, like child trafficking, I've heard a couple of, we've seen a couple of stories. Like there was an Alaska Airlines attendant that noticed that something was off on a flight, and she was able to rescue a victim of child trafficking from the perpetrator on this flight. What kinds of things, based on your experience, what kinds of things can just the general public be looking for to try and identify and help some of these kids? Because as you said, this sounds like it's something that's happening here, and it's happening just underneath the public eye here in America.
And that's the fallacy of it. It is or the truth of it, for that matter, it's a crime that's hidden in plain sight. It's going all around us. We're not aware.
Right.
People are being coerced either by fear for themselves, fear for their families. Some of them are poor things, illiterate people that are promised a better life. That you've brought over in a shipping container or from Asia or from a truck out of Mexico, and people hold onto their passports, and so they become dependent on it, on these people, whether it be fear to eat. And there's signs, especially when you're talking about the sex trafficking stuff. A younger girl with an older man, she's not allowed to speak. She might have some bruises. She doesn't deal with any money, or if she's on her own, she's got little or no money on her. All maybe being watched from a distance. I mean, you look at the girls walk in Aurora.
Right.
Is it you'll if you go a couple, 3, 4 directions, you will find somebody watching her.
Okay. And it's not just child trafficking either. I mean, one thing, you and I were discussing before we started recording this interview, you and I were discussing just like slavery and, slavery that's going on in this kind of thing. Can you give the example that you told me earlier with regards to, the Southeast Asian connection?
Yeah. If you're, I want to, people that go get manicures and pedicures, is that if you go to a Southeast Asian shop and pay attention 3, 4, 5, 6 months if the same help is there, because they'll rotate those girls. And if you have the one owner and then the one younger one that doesn't speak English, she's just learning, and they talk to each other in the native language,
right.
And the girl doesn't look very happy to be there. It's a good red flag.
Okay. Okay. And so a lot of these victims that are they like, are they, grabbed from the street, or are these people that have been just like born into it? I mean, what's the situation
Well, a
there?
lot of them, they're brought here, and
Right.
like I said, for the promise of a better life, and then they're, the family back home is, um, um, they might get a little bit of money. They're in debt, but you look at some of when you talk about some of the different cultures. Is it, let's say I am a poor, uneducated farmer in Thailand,
Right.
and I've got three daughters, and a trafficker comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to educate your girls, and I want to bring them to Bangkok. We're going to give the school. We're going to get them jobs, and we're going to send you money." Instead, they go straight to a brothel in Pattaya, and that doesn't happen. Or the other scenario, I'm a poor, uneducated farmer. I'm having trouble making. We can't even eat. It looks to the youngest one and, "Sorry, honey, you've got to go with them,"
Right.
and they get money. I mean, it's just a sad state of affairs. When I worked in Indonesia, I was in Surabaya, and I wrote a demonstration management course, and I was teaching one of the iterations there. It was about 40 kilometers outside of the city, and to get to the training center, there was a dirt bridge we had to go over,
Right.
and there was a guy. He couldn't have been late 20s, and I watched the one morning when the family showed up in like a small flatbed VW.
Right.
And they had him laying in the back. Two get out, they pick him up, sit him up against a post with a bucket, and all the guy does is just cry all day. And then they come back, I guess, later in the day and pick him up. And I asked the interpreter, I said, "What?" He says, "Well, everyone's got to earn their way." And
Okay.
so that's what he had to do. That was his life, for them to eat him, feed him, and keep him alive. He said he'd have to sit and beg on this bridge every day.
Right. Right. So in turn, you've kind of mentioned this a couple of times where these people are brought into the country. So having the open borders concept that our current U.S. administration is sort of embracing, I can imagine that's really kind of helping this trade, right? Sorry about the dog.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say. I don't. I think it's always an issue. I think it's always going to be an issue.
Right.
And somehow, with the technology, it's got to be. It's got to be, those people have to be separated when they come through the border.
Right.
And the people I know now are, just like in the other administration, are being sent back.
Uh-huh.
So policy, how am I going to work, is different than what the operational of the traffickers. All they do is change their operations a little bit to get around it. Tunnels,
Right.
even coming through tunnels, that a wall doesn't help, vice versa. I mean, so there's arguments on either side of it. The fact of the matter is that they've got somehow have to be checked and rescued.
Okay. So other than downloading the app, what are some of the things that my viewers and listeners, if they listen to this rather than watch the video, but what are some of those people can do? What can we do to help you and your organization in this fight?
Well, if it doesn't necessarily have to be a in progress crime. If you've got a neighbor that's got cars coming and going, you see different people coming, or you could say, a suspicious activity, and it looks like it could be a drug deal, drug house, and the way some of these drugs are now with the fentanyl and stuff that's killing people. I mean, it is a medical emergency. What especially with the fentanyl stuff that's going on now, or you say, I see 20 people come into a 3-car garage every day. Mm-hmm. And they're there from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and then a couple of vans come and pick them up.
Okay.
You might have a trafficked a group of people that are making knockoff Gucci's in a garage, things like that. But so you don't necessarily have to have, just have to have the suspicion, I guess, that something, trust your gut. If it's going on, if it's a good tip, we'll pass it on. That's for a detective to decide whether it's a good tip or not, and they're going to move forward with it.
Right. Okay.
Because the detective might have 80% of a case done, and he needs that 20%, and you don't know whether it's helping or not, but it might.
Right. So what about like donations? I mean, you mentioned you're a 501c3, so I'm assuming you take donations.
Absolutely. In fact, www.csglobalsolutions.com or .org, excuse me, and you can donate, $5 a month. You can donate $5, but everything helps, and all the money goes directly towards rescuing people and stopping transnational crime, arresting the bad guys. I'm 68 years old. Mm-hmm. I've done 33 years in police work. I worked overseas for the feds. I'm doing this now. I don't have to do it, but it's the right thing to do, to use what I've learned, and to I don't have to listen to go through the government bureaucracy for a lot of things, and I can go directly to the source, which we've done, and gone to those agencies, built those trusted relationships, and moving this forward.
Right. And just so you know, and so everybody else knows, I've got it linked in the description, both the website that Jim has mentioned, as well as where you can look to find the app. And I'm assuming the app is both on Android and iOS. It's cross-platform.
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect.
Absolutely.
So once again, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. I know that you're a busy guy, and this is really important. This was something that I felt I had to bring as a public service announcement, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bring me back anytime.
Okay. So I do want to, first of all, again, thank you, Jim, for providing the content, the interview, and that kind of thing. So there were a couple of key points that he was talking about within our discussion that I wanted to make sure that I shared. And one thing that you need to understand is that he provided me with a presentation that he's been doing to advocate for his, Crime Stoppers Global Solutions. And one of the things that he brought up was this graphic here, and I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. He was talking about the migrant and how the travel goes, where it comes through, Turkey and Greece and goes into Serbia, Hungary, Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, and into Germany, and then outward. One of the key points that I think that he made is the fact that, a lot of times we're under the impression that these people are coming from, people that have been captured, kidnapped, whatever. That isn't the case. That isn't really the case. These people are being exploited from outside of our borders and being brought here to our country with the idea that they're going to have a better life, that they're going to be given a better life. They are brought here from other countries and are exploited and used here within the U.S. because I don't know if you caught it or maybe you missed it, joined us late, but the United States is one of the top 3 countries. You have India, you have Brazil, and you have the U.S. as the recipients of these people. And, the proliferation of child sex trafficking in particular, but also the other piece of this too is the slave trade as well. And so it's not just child sex, it's also the slave trade. But this is the key point that I think I wanted to bring to everybody, had to deal with the fact that these people are actually being brought into the country. This isn't about people who are being exploited here, although some definitely are. And there's an article in particular in the Epoch Times today, or Epoch Times this week, that was discussing how this girl who thought she was going to be with her boyfriend, she got suckered into a sex slave operation, because she thought that she fell in love with this boyfriend, and this boyfriend exploited her. I mean, this is happening more often than what we actually believe and what we think. But going back to the whole slavery kind of idea, and let me zoom into this. These are numbers that came from his presentation in regards to the number of people that are enslaved in each region. And if you look, the Americas have over 1 million people that have been enslaved. And by enslaved, that means not only are we talking about sex slaves, but we're also talking about sweatshop workers, workers at the, like he pointed out in the video, the nail salons and things like that. There are things to point out, or things to look for, while you're dealing with this. Europe has, 566,000 potential people being enslaved. You've got Russia and Eurasia, almost 2.6 million. East Asia and Pacific, you're looking at over 6 million, and South Asia, you're looking at over 17 million people that have been enslaved and are being utilized as either sex slaves or slavery of other kinds. This is a worldwide problem. And what Jim is doing, and what Crime Stoppers Global Solutions is doing, is trying to come up with a civilian methodology to report these crimes. Now, I don't know if anybody heard this in the video, but I'm going to bring it up also. That P3 tips, and I have a link to where you can get this, to get the app. That application can be utilized here in the U.S. as well as in some of the international locations that he's dealing with. You can use that to submit anonymous tips. Your information is anonymized, so the only thing that they get is some sort of an individualized number that identifies the information and allows for communication back and forth to the tipster without indicating who that tipster is. This is an incredible use of technology for doing this across the globe. And it doesn't even have to be something that is like a crime that is in progress. It could be any information that you may know. As he pointed out, it could be something you notice that your neighbors or somebody down the block has more people that are coming over during the day, and they're hanging out in the garage and that kind of thing. It just looks a little bit funny. And it's just odd. It's not necessarily your responsibility to check it out. It should be the responsibility of the law enforcement to go ahead and do that. All you're doing is by submitting that tip, is you're being the eyes and ears for the law enforcement officers that are involved in these kinds of crimes, because they can't be everywhere. We've pretty much seen that all across the United States here recently, is they can't be there. But using this app makes it to where it is a secure and anonymous methodology for you to get information to the police officers to help combat these crimes. Okay. Now, here's a statistic or another slide that came from his presentation that just absolutely shocked me. Look at this stat: 9.2 million slaves per year. New. Not who's been in there, but new, brand new. You have 25,200 new slaves per day, 1,050 slaves per hour, and a new slave is being suckered every 4 seconds. Now, this is not something that is, oh, this doesn't happen in America. No, it does. It happens here. I referenced that lawsuit where this girl who was underage, she unfortunately got taken into slavery, and she was exploited for porn on the internet. You look at any of these sites, you can do searches for certain types of women or whatever, whether it's Asian or whatever, and you do those searches and you think these people, in the back of your mind, you might be thinking that these people are volunteering this stuff, that they're doing this for the money. They may not be. In fact, chances are they're not. Chances are they are the victim, and the people making the money off of the videos are the ones that are the perpetrators. And the reason being is because of the amount of money that this generates every single day and every single hour. It's not just older ladies and women who are above 18. It's younger people that are being sucked into this stuff. I highly encourage you, do a search. Go to the Epoch Times, EPOCH. Go to the Epoch Times and look for the article. Actually, this is an excerpt that came in the and I'm trying to get it in the screen here. So this is an excerpt from the paper, from the actual article. There's an article in here. She talks about how she was suckered in by her boyfriend to do these things. The sex trade, it is across the board. It is horrific. It is something that I personally, I believe strongly about. And honestly, I just, I don't know what to say. I mean, this is something that you can download that P3 Tips app and you can help out, even if you see something a little strange at the store, because like Jim pointed out, this is in everybody's face. It might just be somebody that you see every day. It might be somebody that you see once or twice and you kind of think, well, that's a little odd. It's just a little off. And it's right here. It's in your face, but you don't notice it because you're not looking. Start to look. Get that app and help some people out. Like I pointed out, there was an Alaska Airlines attendant who found somebody on the plane. Things just didn't look right, and she was able to help out. Now I've got another slide here. Let me see what this is. Okay, so this is Jim's contact information. I've got a couple of things down in further down in the notes. You can go to jimfuda.com. You can go to the CSGS.org, which is the Crime Stoppers Global Solutions, and you can send him a message, send him an email if you want more information, want to help out. If you also go to the CSGS.org, if you go to that website, you will be able to donate. Even if you're not interested in putting in tips, you can donate. You can donate, as he said at the end, you can donate $5. You can do a one-time donation. You could do a monthly donation. It is all tax deductible. It's 501c3. This is a really important thing that I think that he is doing, that we all can band together and help to combat. And this is really important. This is an important thing for all of us to be able to join in and help out. Help out. This is something that we can all get involved with and be able to help fix, help combat, I should say. Is this whole thing. We don't have to be in the international scene. We can do this right here in the States, because these people, even though they're coming and this is the end of the line for a lot of them, it's still a huge possibility to be able to do this. I mean, I can't even imagine if my daughter were to fall into something like this. I can't even imagine what what horrific stuff would happen with these people. And it's not just child trafficking. It's not just sex trafficking. You heard him. It is, it's internet crime. It's bank fraud. It's drugs. It's guns. It's any type of crime that you might be able to see. And especially now with the whole defund the police operations, we need, as humans and as citizens, we need to stand up to help fight crime all over the country, all over in our neighborhoods. It could be happening right down the street from you. It could be something like a drug house that you're aware of that you could put in a tip on. It's totally anonymous, totally free. And, you know, the best thing he didn't even talk about, but the best thing is there are times where you can get money back. I mean, Crime Stoppers by itself has rewards that are offered for people who can give information about specific crimes. And that's where the money goes to. That's where your donation goes to. This isn't a donation to necessarily run the operations per se. There are benefits. There is things that these people can do for the community. We can start our own community policing, and we can do it in such a way that is anonymous and helps out people. Very important. It was a very important subject. It was a very important interview. I had to get it out there. Hopefully you have gained some knowledge and understanding. I know I was kind of surprised at some of the numbers. I was definitely surprised that the U.S. is one of the top 3 in the world for child sex trafficking. I mean, I would not have been able to. I seriously, it's a scary thought. It is totally scary, but there is something that you can do. You can open up your eyes, open up your ears, start being a little more observant, and download that app to help get the information into the hands of the police department, to get the information to the detectives that need it. As Jim said toward the end, it might be something that a detective needs in order to be able to close a case. Do it today. And if you feel like you can't do that, donate today. Crime Stoppers Global Services, the CSGS.org. And that's my final Whiskey Musings thought. Thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate you, my subscribers. If you like the content that I'm bringing to you, please subscribe, hit the bell. The bell will notify you when I go live, when I post a new video. Also, don't forget, I not only host things or hold things on YouTube, I also have them over on Rumble, rumble.com/Whiskey Musings, and you can go and view past episodes on both places. Do me a favor, get the word out, talk to people, tell them what the show is all about so we can increase my subscribers. I wholeheartedly thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. And do not forget, absolutely do not forget, tomorrow is Mother's Day. If your mother is here, tell her how much you love her, because to be honest with you, you may not have her very much longer depending upon where she is. If she's already gone, say a prayer and tell her how much you miss her. I know I love my mom, and I'll be talking to her tomorrow if she's not watching now, but I know I love my mom, and happy Mother's Day to everybody. We'll see y'all next week on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night.